Thank you. Thank you, Lauren. It's so great to be back in Texas at South by Southwest. I actually grew up in Arlington, Texas, and my wife and I lived here in Austin off and on the past 2 years. So any excuse to come back is a good one, but South by Southwest is the best. As you saw just now in this video that we launched about 30 days ago, over the past month, we had asked our community and our customers to think about the daily decisions we make every day. And by changing one or two of those decisions, could we make the world a better place? And as I thought about my presentation for today, I thought about, whoops. I'm never good at these clickers. And there we go, sorry. As I thought about my presentation today, I thought it would be fun to actually look back over the past 7 years since we started TOMS at all the most pivotal decisions that we've made. We look at the good decisions and the bad decisions alike in hopes that there's some learning there that can be applied to your businesses or how you're building your personal brand. And at the end of my presentation, I'm going to share a very big decision that TOMS and myself are making today. In fact, this decision is the launch of our next one-for-one product, which is actually underneath this box right now. So that'll be at the end. But let's get started with the decisions. The first decision was really 7 years ago when I went to Argentina on a vacation. At this point, I was running an online driver's ed company, and we had spent the last 9 months getting ready for launch. I was completely exhausted, and I really needed a break. So I went to my partners and said, look, I'm going to take 1 month off, go somewhere, and completely unplug. This was really important to me. Now, when I got to Argentina, I got a typical guidebook and looked for things that I wanted to do and saw that, Buenos Aires is known for tango, so I took a few tango lessons. Next, I saw that the national sport besides soccer is polo, and I had ridden some horses growing up in Texas, so I tried that. Not so well. But the third thing that I saw that Argentina is really well known for, that I also really enjoy, is the red wine, the Malbec. So I spent most of my month off visiting wineries and cafes, and it was actually in one of those cafes when I met a couple of women that were also on vacation but doing something very different. These women were there doing volunteer work, and they specifically were doing something called a shoe drive. Now, what they explained to me was that they had been going around to wealthy families in Buenos Aires for the past couple weeks, collecting slightly used shoes so that they could give them to some children living a couple hours outside the city. They specifically explained that these kids needed these shoes to go to school because as part of the school uniform, you had to wear a closed-toe pair of shoes. And many of these kids either had no shoes or just a pair of flip-flops. I was really interested in what they were doing. I had never really done anything like that in my life up until this point. So I asked them if I could go along, and they said yes. So a couple days later, I find myself with a few more strangers in a van pulling a U-Haul full of these shoes that they had collected. So I go with them, and we get there, and kids are running out of every nook and cranny of this little town, all with big smiles, and their parents are following behind. And as I watched these women starting putting shoes on these kids' feet, I immediately jumped in and started doing it myself. Now these feet, sometimes they had cuts and infections or blisters. They weren't pretty feet. But when you put the shoe on the child's foot and you saw the smile on their face, it was just amazing. I remember thinking that how simple. These weren't even new shoes. These were used shoes, but the excitement. You would have thought it was like Christmas Day. So literally, I left that afternoon, left that town, and as we were leaving and all the kids are waving, just totally filled. I felt so good about everything that had happened, and I wanted to help more. So that night at dinner, I was with my polo teacher, Alejo, at his farm, and I was telling him about my experience. And as I was talking to Alejo, I was telling him about how these kids need these shoes to go to school, and that for many of these kids, it was their only pair. And so when I was telling Alejo about this, he was very impressed that, these women from the United States had spent their whole vacation doing this and thought it was great that I spent the day doing this. And he saw the excitement I had as I told the story. But towards the end of dinner, he asked me a question that I really wasn't prepared for. He said, Blake, if these kids need shoes so bad to go to school, and this is their only pair, what's going to happen when they wear out of them? Or if it's kids, kids' feet grow really fast, what's going to happen when they grow out of them? And I remember sitting there at dinner thinking, I have no idea. I really didn't. I never stopped to ask the nonprofit that we were working with how they could continue to sustain the giving of these shoes that these kids needed. And I began to think, did we actually do anything good that day? Or did we just make ourselves feel good by having this day with these kids? And I was very troubled by the whole experience. And so I went to bed that night, and I must say I was a little bit, kind of had kind of confusing thoughts about what we experienced and how I felt about it. And I woke up the next morning after not sleeping very well, determined to think of a way to make sure these kids get their next pair of shoes. So I was literally writing in my journal and thinking of ideas, and most of the ideas were, the first ones were, let's start a nonprofit, get people to donate shoes or donate money, and then I could buy shoes. But I recognized that then I would be completely dependent on donations. And having no experience in charity, I didn't want to be in that situation. So that morning as I was writing, I thought, you know what? I've started 4 businesses in the last 10 years. I love entrepreneurship, and I love using business to solve problems. What if instead of starting a nonprofit, we started a for-profit? And a for-profit shoe business where every time we sold a pair, we would give a pair away. And so I got very excited about this. I ended up telling Alejo about it later in the day. He agreed to help me. And that was the first big decision that I made. And it really was probably one of the most important decisions, and that was, instead of starting a nonprofit, I would start a for-profit based on this model that every time we sold a pair, we would give a pair away. And I took that decision back to Los Angeles with a lot of enthusiasm. Sorry, my presentation. So when I get back to LA, I'm telling all my friends and business colleagues about this idea and this decision I'd made to start a for-profit shoe business based on this model of every pair we sell, we give one away. Now, all of my friends and even my business colleagues admired this idea of helping these kids in Argentina through the sale of shoes. But every single one of them said, don't do one for one, that's too much. Just give a percentage. There's a lot of awesome companies that give a percentage. And just tell the people who are buying them that a percentage is going to a fund where you can buy shoes to help kids. Or maybe every 3 pairs of shoes, you give one away. Because that's the only way this is going to work as a business. And that was the thing that I heard over and over again. But the second decision that I made, and I think it was one of the most critical ones I made, was I realized that I was starting this, I was going to do this TOMS shoes thing so that we could give as many children shoes as possible. And doing the one-for-one model would allow that. But even more than that, it would allow us to give our customers the gratification and the intimacy, the experience in a very intimate way that when they bought a pair, they were giving a pair. So the second decision I made, and one that really I founded the entire business on, is we were not going to give a percentage. We were going to give one for one. So that's decision number 2. Decision number 3 really came about 5 months later after we had started to sell some shoes in Los Angeles. We got our shoes in 3 or 4 boutiques. We had a really nice write-up in the LA Times. Things were going pretty good. But we knew if we were going to be taken seriously, we needed to be sold on the East Coast as well, and specifically the fashion capital of New York City. So I hadn't spent a lot of time in New York, but I got a list of some stores that I should try to visit when I'm there, and I went to New York City. Now, when I got to New York, I spent 4 or 5 days sleeping on a friend's couch and visiting these different boutiques in the different kind of fancy shopping areas in New York. And what I found were that the buyers in New York were much more, I would say, jaded or not interested. I mean, they didn't care about my shoes, and they sure didn't care about my story. And that was very discouraging because I had had such a good response in these stores that we were selling in Los Angeles. So it was time to go home, and before I went home that day, I went for a run in Central Park, and I ran a little bit too long, and so I literally had to go straight from there to my hotel to the airport. So I go to the airport, and I'm wearing my running shoes. Now, typically, I'm always wearing a pair of TOMS shoes at this point, 5 months in. And as I'm getting ready to check in at the American Airlines check-in counter, I look down or look over, and there's this girl, and she's wearing a red pair of TOMS. Now, at this moment, I had never seen a stranger wearing our shoes. I had seen friends and family and interns all around our neighborhood, but I hadn't seen someone, 5,000 miles away wearing our shoes, so I got super excited. I tried to contain my excitement, and I asked her about the shoes. And I said, "Excuse me, ma'am, I couldn't help but notice these red shoes that you're wearing. They're amazing, what are they?" And I'm trying to play it cool, and she kind of looks at me and she says, "TOMS shoes." And I said, "Okay, cool." And I'm doing the check-in thing, like playing it cool. And she wanted more of my attention. So she literally grabs my shoulder and physically pulls me over and says, "No, you don't understand. This is the most amazing company in the world. When I bought this pair of shoes, they gave a pair to a child in Argentina." And she continued. "And there's this guy, he lives in Los Angeles. I think he lives on a boat." And I mean, she literally started telling me my life story word for word with like more passion than my mom tells it, right? And so I have to tell her who I am. I mean, I'm a little bit embarrassed. There's people gathering around. She's very animated. And so I say to her, "Excuse me, actually, my name's Blake, and I started TOMS." She pauses, deer in headlights, and she goes, "Why did you cut your hair?" That was her one question. But I learned a lot about business from that question, actually. And the reason why is, the reason she knew I cut my hair, she wasn't just a customer. She was a supporter. She was an evangelist for the brand. She had watched every single video on YouTube of us giving away the shoes. And I remember giving her a hug and saying thank you and going back and getting on my plane, long flight back to LA. And I started writing in my journal about the experience. And I thought, okay, if this is one woman in an airport who had the desire to tell the TOMS story to a complete stranger, how many other people has she told? I'm sure she's posted about it on Facebook. She's maybe given TOMS to a friend for a birthday present. I'm sure she's tweeted about it. So how many people have heard the TOMS story and therefore bought a pair, and therefore a child getting a pair because of this one woman? And I remember sitting there thinking, because we were right at that beginning stage, we were starting to get momentum, and we were really contemplating doing kind of traditional marketing and advertising. And I made a decision right then. I said, you know what? We don't need to focus on marketing and advertising. In fact, we're not going to spend $1 on marketing and advertising. We're going to focus on our giving, and most importantly, allowing our customers to be part of our giving story. And so that led to this. The TOMS ticket to give. How many people have seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory? Raise your hand. Okay. How many people, when they saw that movie, if they're a kid, really hoped they would get the golden ticket? Right? So I remember watching that movie as a kid and thinking, oh my gosh, all I have to do is buy a chocolate bar and I could go to this magical place. Over time, after giving speeches on college campuses and meeting many of our customers, it became very clear to me if there was one thing that our most loyal customers and fans wanted more than anything was to actually go and put shoes on kids' feet. They had seen the videos, they had heard my talks, they had seen pictures in magazines, but they wanted to go and see it firsthand themselves. And as I learned from the girl in the airport, the most powerful thing we could do is make sure that our customers are engaged in the authenticity of our giving. So we created the TOMS ticket to give, where totally random customers were selected. And then we showed up at their home, at their office, at their work, and surprised them with the ticket to give. So I want to show you a quick video of Bo receiving his ticket in Toledo.
Hi, I'm Chelsea. I work at TOMS, and we're here in Oregon staking out Bo so we can give him a ticket to give. I think that might be him. You got a visual confirmation? This is Bo. We're hot on his trail, we're directly behind him, and we are about to sneak attack and serve him his ticket to give. Sir, please step away from the vehicle. We're going. Sir, please, in front of the vehicle, I have to serve you a ticket. Bo?
Yeah.
You're this week's winner of TOMS ticket to give. We're sending you on a life-changing TOMS giving trip to Honduras.
Awesome! So amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I'm Bo, and I won the ticket to give.
Woo! Honduras, here I come!
We're leaving Oregon now. Who knows where we'll be next? You could be this week's winner. Go to toms.com. I eat one donut, and then eat another donut. 1 for 1.
Thank you. So, as you can see from these pictures here, Bo went on his giving trip, and he had an amazing experience. And one of the best memories I have in the 7 years was I got to go on that giving trip with Bo and 7 other of the winners. Now, these are complete strangers that all found out that they had won, very similar to the fashion that Bo did. And it was so cool to me because some of them were first-time TOMS customers. Some of them had been buying TOMS for years. But all of them had no idea what it would actually be like to give that first pair of shoes, the pair that was the result of their purchase. And it was an unbelievable experience, and one that Bo and these different people would share with me at dinner every night. That, and it really brought it all to life. But what was really amazing is when Bo got back, something happened that we really didn't even anticipate. Bo became somewhat of a hometown hero, and he shared his pictures and his videos and his journal entries on Twitter, on YouTube, on Facebook. And not only did he share them, but then his friends started sharing them, and it went absolutely viral. And the thing about this is that we could have spent, we could never have spent enough money in marketing and advertising to show the authenticity of our giving like Bo did. But what was better than Bo was actually the fact that there were 52 different Bos that went on giving trips that year. And these people together as a group had more impact than anything we could have done from a traditional advertising or marketing style. So the decision that we made because of the girl in the airport to focus on giving and incorporating people in our story, I think is one of the reasons that I'm standing up here today. Next decision. Now this decision in this picture brings back actually a very haunting memory for me. This decision almost sunk TOMS. Literally, because of this decision, I was very close to not being standing up here today. You see, when I decided to get into the shoe business, I didn't know anything about shoes. And one of the things that I thought was really ridiculous in the shoe business was the boxes. How much waste is created through these shoe boxes? I mean, every time I've ever bought a pair of shoes, the first thing I do is throw away the box. And many people don't even recycle them. And so when we decided we were getting into the shoe business and we were going to be, somewhat radical with our 1-for-1 model and this idea of 1-for-1 and giving back, I also said, we're not going to do shoe boxes. They make no sense. Now, at the beginning of our business, a lot of it was online on toms.com, so that was fine because when someone ordered, we put the bag into the shipping, either bag or box in that regard. But we didn't have a lot of big customers. And the boutiques that sold our shoe, they liked, merchandising the shoes with the bags. But when we got a call from one of the nation's largest, retailers and one of the preeminent footwear sales groups that they were interested in carrying our shoes, and I told them that they came in bags, they said, that's a non-starter. And I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, all of our stock rooms are organized by boxes, so the sales associates can go and grab a box really quickly to service a customer. So, bags would not work. And I said, look, I appreciate that you've been in this business. Well, actually, I really didn't appreciate it. But I said, I appreciate you've been in this business probably 100 years, and I've been in it maybe 100 days. But we're not going to ship in boxes. So if you want TOMS shoes, you have to take them in bags. Well, we had a lot of momentum going, and this buyer really wanted to see if our shoes would work on their floor. So reluctantly, they agreed. And of course, they were right. Within 2 weeks, every single TOMS shoe bag was a complete tangled mess in the stockroom of these stores across the country. What started out as some pretty good sales in the first week plummeted to almost no sales in the second week. And by the third week, I got a call asking us to come pick up all of our shoes and all of our bags because they no longer would do business with us. Literally, I had to go to my staff and say, we might be done. We had put so much money and inventory into this retailer, we didn't have anywhere else for it to go, that it was completely devastating. It took us 2 years to win over the support of this retailer and to finally get back in the stores. And I assure you, when we did, no bags, boxes. So it wasn't just the fact that we were selling our shoes in boxes that was, growing our sales. There was a lot of momentum, a lot of chatter on social media about our model and what we were doing, and many people thinking our shoes was a fresh idea when it comes to canvas slip-ons, and they were very comfortable. So this original classic shoe became the #1 selling shoe in almost every single retailer we worked with over the next 2 years. And even better than that, as we introduced new styles, like the ones up here, they also took on. And before we knew it, we were really I would say, some people would say, kind of a force in the shoe business. Now, this was kind of surprising to me because, when I first started, it was this kind of spontaneous response to help these kids with these one pair of shoes. And then we became doing these other shoes. And next thing you know, we're selling in thousands of stores. And everyone is so focused on the shoes. And there was nothing more than our retailers and our sales reps and probably even my staff that wanted me to focus on than the shoe business. But the problem was I didn't see TOMS as a shoe company. I saw us as a one-for-one company. I didn't believe it was our shoe that was causing us to grow so much, but this idea that we were connecting customers with their purchases to a meaningful act, and that one-for-one could actually be a lot bigger than just shoes. The other thing that had happened during those 2 years is I had traveled to many of the countries where we give our shoes. And in traveling, I saw so many more needs, and many of them that were being met by amazing NGOs and nonprofits. But one need that I saw in particular really spoke to me because it was a need that I experienced as a kid. As a kid, I had to wear contacts and glasses, and I hated it. I could never see really well, especially when I played tennis, because the difference between the contacts and the glasses was quite strong. And it wasn't until I was 22 years old that I was able to get an RK surgery and restore my vision to 20/20. And I remember when that happened thinking a miracle literally had happened. So when I met different nonprofits in the field while giving shoes that were there doing eye care, I knew that was the next thing that I wanted to focus on. And 2 years ago, we launched TOMS Eyewear. We launched with a small collection of sunglasses, and as you can see, they have these bright color stripes. And the idea with the stripes is that every stripe should tell a story, because every pair of glasses helped one person get their sight back. We do that in a number of ways. We do that through cataract surgeries, we do that through prescription glasses, and even medical treatments. But every single pair sold is matched with one person getting their sight. And I must say, the giving trips that I've been on and visiting our site partners have been some of the best moments of my life. This woman right here had cataracts in both eyes. And when we took off her patches that morning in Nepal, she could kind of see. But when we came back 2 days later and the blurriness had gone away, I watched her see her grandchildren for the first time. And that I'll never forget as long as I live. And it happened because someone bought a pair of acetate sunglasses in a surf shop in Los Angeles. And now we've helped 300,000 people get their sight back. And we're not going to stop. Well, thank you. And we've recognized that we can help more. So this last month, we went from just sunglasses to now we offer a whole range of optical frames with the same stripes, because I want someone that has to wear glasses when they put them on every day to be reminded that they've even given a pair of glasses or given a cataract or given a medical treatment to someone in need. And those stripes allow them to tell our story. So let's get back to shoes. To date, we have given over 15 million pairs of shoes to children in need. Thank you. Now, this number is inconceivable to me even standing on this stage. I mean, when we started, there were 250 kids in Los Piletones that we wanted to help. And this has been an incredible journey for us in learning about the most sustainable and effective way to give. We started off giving so children could use shoes to go to school that need them for the uniforms. We evolved to looking at some of the worst foot diseases like hookworm and podoconiosis and using our shoes to protect kids' feet. And then we realized that our giving partners who were doing all this amazing work in these communities could use the shoes in ways that we never even imagined. Sometimes they're used as incentives to get the whole family to get their vaccination. Other times when you signed up for the savings and lending program, the children get shoes. There's been many ways that our giving model has evolved, but it's always stayed true to one for one. And it's something that I'm really proud of. So you can imagine how discouraging it was 2 years ago when we started first receiving pretty significant criticism about our giving model. Our critics acknowledged that aid was important in poverty alleviation, but they criticized and attacked me specifically, saying that if you really care about poverty alleviation, you should be focusing on economic development and creating jobs. Now, I didn't disagree with this idea, but it was definitely not the business that we were in, nor did we have the supply chain to do this. And at first, I kind of tried to ignore the criticism. At times, I got angry with it because I didn't think it was fair. But ultimately, we decided to embrace it. Because we recognized that as big as our business had gotten, if we could take some of this shoe manufacturing and actually put it in the places that we're helping, not only could we help in the necessary aid, but we could create jobs and we could be involved in economic development. So, our first factory that we started working with, a partner we found in Kenya, started making shoes. But then we decided we want to go somewhere where no shoes are being made at all and where jobs were absolutely critical for this country to continue to grow and prosper. And so we spent 2 years working with the Clinton Foundation and the Prime Minister of Haiti. And last month, we opened a TOMS factory in Haiti. And I must say, this when I got to send this tweet out, when I got a text message from someone who works with us in Haiti saying, this is the very first pair of TOMS that just went off the product line. And I don't know where I was or what I was doing, but I stopped and I tweeted this, and it really was a very, very proud moment. And at that moment, I realized, that I was actually thankful for the 2 years of kind of criticism that I had dealt with this idea. And it actually will help look to how TOMS operates in the future. In fact, this focus on economic development is leading to the final decision I'm going to talk about today. And this is the big decision that I alluded to in the beginning. You see, when I was learning about economic development and where we could do factories, I went to conferences, I listened to panels, and I met a lot of amazing people that were doing a lot of amazing work in this area. But surprisingly, the conversation I had that really got me on a totally new path happened at a Dallas Cowboys game. I met this gentleman, and he asked me if I was the guy who started TOMS, and of course I said yes. And he said, look, my son has been really inspired by you, and he's doing a lot in economic development. And I said, really? What's he doing? He says, well, the way he's chosen to approach it is he's focusing on coffee farmers all around the world. And I said, well, tell me more. And he said, well, you know what? He would rather tell you his story more than me telling it as his dad. So here's his number, and you should give him a call. So he writes it down on a card, and I put it in my pocket. I go to the game, and doing the rest of the day. And it's a couple weeks later, I'm literally putting this pair of jeans on again, and that card is in the pocket. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to call this guy and ask him about what he's doing in the economic development focus and working with coffee farmers. So I call this guy, and he's very excited, to talk about it. And he said, you know what? Why don't you come to my home and let me tell you our whole story. So I went to his house, and he told me all that he had been done to help making sure that directly trading with these coffee farmers so that they're getting the absolute best price. And then he told me how they're teaching these farmers agricultural skills so they're getting the highest yield. And then he invited me to go to Rwanda. So what did I do? I got on a plane, and I went to Rwanda. And I'm glad I did. Because in Rwanda, I met these coffee farmers. Some of these farmers literally have 80 to 100 trees for their family. And it's in a small plot, like one little area of the seating here. And they care for each single tree because every single bean that they care for makes a big difference in their family. And it was amazing seeing the impact and hearing the stories of what was happening in these farmers' lives by working with this guy and trading directly with him. But the thing that I really didn't understand about the coffee business that I learned later that day was the number one ingredient used in processing coffee is actually water. Now in Rwanda, there's a lot of places and a lot of communities that don't have access to safe water. But these coffee farmers, in order to get the highest price for their beans, absolutely must use water to wash them after they pick them off the trees. Actually, if you look at the coffee industry on the stock exchange from a commodity trading standpoint, coffee is actually labeled by how much it's washed. There's partially washed, fully washed, super premium, fully washed. It goes on and on. Because the water and the amount of water they use is what preserves the quality of the beans. So there was this horrible irony I was experiencing in Rwanda at first when I recognized that so much water was being used so the coffee farmers could get the highest price for their beans, yet there was many people who didn't have access to safe water. And so that's when I really had my epiphany that's leading to our next one-for-one product. I realized that we actually could enter the coffee industry with a one-for-one model. What we would do is we would work directly with farmers to bring the best coffees around the world here to us. And every time we sold coffee, we would give money back to invest in water systems. So, for the first time ever, I'd like to introduce the next one-for-one product for TOMS, and that's the TOMS Roasting Company. So, two areas of impact that we've never been able to focus on. Well, one, we were able to once we went to Haiti. Economic development. Every single country, or most countries that we give shoes in, have coffee industries and have farmers that can live a better life by trading directly with them. Second thing is as the back of the bag says, this bag provides water. Every bag of beans that we sell, we will give 1 week of clean drinking water to a person in need. We'll work with amazing partners on the ground to help create sustainable water systems with these investments. And it's not just the bags. Actually, at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning, we're opening the first TOMS Cafe here in Austin, Texas. And our concept of cafes is going to be a little different. Rather than your traditional coffee shop, we will sell our shoes and our eyewear. We'll have our premium coffees. But we're really focused on creating an engaging community space. We'll allow nonprofits to have events in these spaces. We'll allow people to come and have a meeting if they need to, or just to have good old-fashioned community and conversation over a great cup of coffee. And with every cup that they buy, they will know that water will be going to a person in need. Now, if you're watching the simulcast right now and aren't able to join us at 6 a.m. tomorrow morning when we open the cafe, I'm also proud to announce today that starting tomorrow, we'll be national with Whole Foods. So, Whole Foods has been an amazing partner to TOMS Shoes. We've been selling our shoes in there for 5 or 6 years now, and they have been incredibly supportive. So when they agreed to put our coffee in their stores nationwide to help promote this new one-for-one mission, we were super, super excited. Now, I know there's some people probably watching saying, I don't live next to a Whole Foods, I still want to taste this coffee. Well, the third thing that we're launching tomorrow is the TOMS Roasting Club. We want to give you the most premium coffee experience possible, and we want to make it super convenient and meaningful. So at toms.com, you can go and tell us your coffee preferences, how you make your coffee, and every month you'll get a different coffee from one of the countries we're sourcing in. But not only will you get a very high premium quality coffee, but you'll get information about the farmers who harvested the beans and the water project that your purchase is helping invest in. So visit toms.com if you're interested in the coffee club. But as a thank you to everyone, and I know my staff thinks this is crazy, but I decided I want to do this. I'm giving everyone here a bag of coffee today. So, you a coffee, and you a coffee. And actually, if you want, share this with your friends if they're not here, because we want to give a lot of coffee away. All you got to do is text BEAN to 75309, and then you'll automatically get the coupon code so you can go to toms.com and get a bag of coffee. We really want everyone to taste our premium coffee, but also to share the story and the impact that we hope to have by getting in this new industry. Today, it's a store in Austin, In 2 months, we'll have a store in New York, then one in Portland, San Francisco, and we'll continue to go on as long as communities continue to support us. So in conclusion, 7 decisions in 7 years. It started with starting as a for-profit and not a nonprofit, and then it went from being just a shoe company to a one-for-one company, and now entering the coffee industry with TOMS Roasting Company to have new types of impact. The one consistent thing in all these decisions was they were made with our commitment to the mission of TOMS. And the mission of TOMS is simple. It's to use business to improve lives. And I want to close by thanking everyone in the room that has helped us do that for the past 7 years. Thank you very much.
All right, so can everybody hear me? Yeah. All right, so Blake is here to answer your questions for the next 15 minutes. So a reminder to tweet to #AskBlake, and he will answer. So our first question says, Blake, you came to South by Southwest 7 years ago when you started. What are the biggest changes in your experience this year from that first year?
So the first year I came to South by Southwest, I was living in an Airstream trailer, selling the shoes out of the back of the trailer on 2nd Street and like fighting off the cops trying to get us to move it. So it was a very different experience now. But I think the thing is, it was actually exciting because I'd been back to South by Southwest a couple times in between, is when I was flying in on the plane, I was thinking about like, I had the same kind of hope and hustle right now that I did 7 years ago because of getting in a totally new business. You know, one of the great things about, my job is that we get to continue to innovate and have new ideas. And even though TOMS as a brand has grown and we have a lot of different processes and systems and all these things you have to do as a larger business, we still get to, take risk and be entrepreneurial. So my experience so far here has been very different because I'm staying in a really nice place at my friend's place at the W who lives there, and I'm not sleeping and worrying about cops, and I'm getting to speak to people where before I had to beg people who were walking by to come in our Airstream and buy a pair of shoes. So it's good to be back. It's Bean. It should be on the screen. If they can put up the code so everyone can text it in, that'd be great. It's text the word. There you go. Let's keep that up for a minute so people can write down or share it with friends. Yep.
Sure. So the next question comes from Glenn Kaplan. She wants to know, what does coffee mean for the future of one for one?
So, my kind of hope and dream for one is that we can enter many different industries, not just fashion and lifestyle, and that's why coffee made so much sense to me. I think that the concept of one-for-one and allowing people to give back with their purchases can be much larger than shoes or eyewear or coffee. I see it working in hospitality. I see it working in banking, potentially in food. So I hope that if we can prove successful with TOMS Roasting Company, it will open up a lot of opportunities for us to actually partner with other companies in these industries to bring TOMS products and to be able to give people ways to have impact with many more products. So this is hopefully the beginning of something really big for us.
All right, Christine Church wants to know, have you thought about working on domestic giving?
Yes, so we actually, that's one thing, I'm glad you asked that question, Christine. We actually do a lot of domestic giving. We don't maybe promote it as much as we should, but we've, I think, given over 400,000 or 500,000 pairs of shoes in the past couple years, and we're committed to give up to 1 million in the next 2 years. And we give all different types of shoes. So we give our regular shoe, we give like an athletic shoe, we give a cold weather boot. I was actually at an Indian reservation in New Mexico this year where we were giving cold weather boots as it started to get winter time. So we give we do give a lot in the U.S., and we think that that's a really important part of our business, and we know that it's something that our customers are really concerned about as well.
Next question is, TOMS is so well known for its classic silhouette as the business grows. How do you keep TOMS fresh?
Well, we have some amazing designers. I mean, I'm not able to do it myself anymore like in the early days, and I don't have that skill to know what's the next shoe and how do we take a shoe and make it TOMS. I mean, one of the things for me that's been fun is I always wore the classic TOMS shoes every single day of my life, no matter where I went, and that was kind of painful sometimes in New York City in the wintertime, and it didn't go with every outfit. So now, like the shoe I'm wearing here, is a brogue, which, we kind of took our TOMS take on it. So we recognize, and the designers recognize that we can't stay stagnant. We can't just continue to do our classic. And that's why we expanded to, espadrille wedges and ballet flats and brogues. And we're coming out with a whole series of leather boots for men and women in the fall. But it's really important to sustain our giving that we continue to grow our designs. But I don't take credit for that. We have an amazing design team in LA.
Simon Kemp says, I'd like to start a similar venture to TOMS. What's the top tip you'd give to someone starting out on that journey?
So Simon, I think the tip that I always give to people is the most important thing is that you really focus, if you're saying a similar venture, meaning that you're going to have a giving component to your business, it's really important to think through the giving and think through it in great detail first. I will be honest, when I started, it was like a spontaneous response to these kids that I met, and I had not thought through the complexity of the giving. I mean, some of the biggest challenges we've had at TOMS, and I would say year 2, 3, and 4, was to figure out how to do giving in a sustainable way, how to keep up with sales, and how to make sure that it has great impact. And we had to hire a lot of consultants and people who were very, very smart in this space. And had I spent more time thinking through the giving part, it would have saved me a lot of time, energy, and money over the past couple years. So as long as you can lock down that and you can show how you can do that in an authentic way, then the rest of it, I think, kind of takes care of itself.
Well, I thought the coffee was enough. But Michael wants to know, what are you thinking about next?
Frankly, I'm thinking about having a beer because I was very nervous before the speech because I didn't know how the whole reveal thing was going to go, and I didn't know how people were going to respond. So now that there's, thank you. I'm thinking as soon as I get off, it's going to be a Shiner Bock, my favorite from Texas. But after I have my beer, I'm going to we're really going to be focused on opening these cafes, really learning how we can grow the TOMS Coffee Club, hopefully working with companies that serve coffee in their workplace to see if they would switch to TOMS Roasting Companies. So it's really going to be a big focus for me and for the company as we continue, this next year or so. And then our kind of dream scenario would be is that kind of every 12 months, we're able to introduce a new one-for-one product. But for the next couple of months, I'm going to be really focused on coffee.
Daniel Head asked if you've personally met with the coffee farmers.
Yes, and that was awesome because for all these years that we've given shoes away, we literally drive by coffee plantations. And I never really thought twice about it. Whether I'm in Guatemala or Peru or Rwanda, in many areas where we're giving shoes in very rural areas, you see farmers and oftentimes coffee farmers. And I think one of the things that was the coolest experience about my trip when I met the coffee farmers in Rwanda was seeing, and I had no idea, how detail-oriented they were with every single tree. I mean, some of these farmers, literally, like I said, would have 80 or 90 trees for their entire family. And for generations, that paid for their livelihood. It paid for their kids to go to school. And so each of these trees was so significant to them. And meeting with them and hearing how they have learned, through our partners, these new agricultural skills that give them a higher yield for each tree was super cool. So meeting the coffee farmers was awesome. Coffee plantations are some of the most beautiful places in the world. If you've never been to one, I highly recommend it. But yeah, the coffee farmers have been a really great part of me learning about this business.
Martina asks, what are the main challenges in running a business that generates profit to stay healthy while still giving back to communities?
I think one of the main challenges is really this balance between focusing on our giving and focusing on our business. I'll give you a very good South by Southwest example of this, and my head of digital is sitting right here, so she is going to like this as well. But one of the biggest challenges is the real estate on our homepage. Half of the company, or not half the company, but certain people in the company think it absolutely should be 100% dedicated to telling the stories of our giving partners and our giving experiences, because that's why we started and that's what we're about. But the reality is we can't give unless we sell. And if we don't optimize our website to sell shoes and eyewear and now coffee, then we can't do the giving that we want to do. So that's an example of a very tough daily creative challenge of balance. How much do we talk about our product and how much do we invest in new shoes and new products versus investing in continuing to do our giving in a sustainable way? Now the good thing is because we founded the business on 1-for-1, and we will never ever, and you can hear me, never ever sell a product where we don't incorporate giving in an authentic way. Everyone in the company buys in and understands that. But it's not about the actual giving that's the challenge. It's the communication of the giving that I think is one of the biggest challenges, because it is great to communicate all the stories from the field and all the giving partners, but it also is really important that we're showing a visitor to the site or on mobile where you have much less space our newest shoe, because that's what allows us to do the giving. So it's a great question. It's very relevant, I think, for this conference.
Okay, Amelia Flockhart asks, why the name TOMS, and how did you decide on your initial signature shoe design?
So that's a good question, usually the first one. So my name is Blake. It's not Tom. But the idea when I started was if we sell a pair of shoes today, we'll give away a pair tomorrow. And we called them tomorrow's shoes, but I couldn't fit tomorrow's on this little tag here. So we shortened it to TOMS, and people have asked me if I'm Tom ever since. Actually, a quick funny story is when I was in the Airstream trailer, I was going around the country, and this was after we got in a couple of pretty important retailers, and I was doing what they call like a PA, personal appearance, and they liked this because they can market to their customers that the founder, the owner, the designer of the company is coming, and it helps them sell more shoes. And so I showed up, I think it was at a Nordstrom, and I showed up several times, and this happened, where I literally would go in, and I'd say, hi, it's Blake, I'm here for TOMS, for the PA, and the manager would look at me like literally like I ran over their dog or something, and they'd be, oh, we have a big problem. And I was like, oh shoot, I got the wrong day, like what's wrong? And they go, no, we were promised that Tom was coming. And so I'd have to whip out my laptop, get an internet connection, and show them that what they thought was Tom was actually me. So luckily that doesn't happen as much anymore.
Okay, Becky Power asks, did you ever know the name of the lady in the red shoes? Do you think she knows what effect she had on your business?
I would love this, and this is also a great audience to do this. Let's find this lady. I've told that story so many times. I've written about it in my book. I'm like, at some point, she has to hear this and like send me an email. So if anyone has ever heard that story from someone else besides me, in telling it now, you meet her, please tell her to email TOMS. I will give her red TOMS forever. Or probably any other TOMS she wants.
I think you're going to get a lot of emails. Christopher Lowe asks, what's more important for TOMS in the long term, diversification or preserving the core brand, which is making shoes?
I think they're equal. I mean, I think that, we are definitely, as I expressed in decision number 5, we are a shoe business. We have a lot of different styles. We have great retailers that depend on us to continue to innovate and create new styles. But at the same time, we're a 1-for-1 company, and we're a global giving company, and we must continue to innovate with new products. So while it's coffee today, hopefully there's so many other industries, and hopefully with partners that already have the supply chain and the retail and the experience that will invite us to participate in their businesses so we can create new products with new impact. So I really say there isn't one that's more important than the other, but I do think that we must continue to evolve and innovate and be entrepreneurial in our approach.
Great. Well, that's all the time we have for Q&A. If you'd like to make any closing statements, you're welcome to. But
No, thank you for making me feel so good today. That's it. Thank you.
one more big hand for Blake.